Thank you to Naz. Now, writer and broadcaster Emma Wolfe and the author and journalist James Bloodworth join us for a look through this morning's papers. Good morning.
Good morning to you both.
Can I ask you before we do the papers, have you ever been to Cirque du Soleil?
No.
It's Cirque du Soleil.
I know, I did delivery. I've got to tell you this, peeps. This is brilliant. This is where Rosie Wright went last night. Hugely excited. Royal Albert Hall. Came in this morning. I said, how was it? She went, it was all right, but there was no story.
No,
it's an upmarket circus, love. There is no story.
That is unfair. First of all, it was genuinely brilliant. I mean, the acrobatics was... I just thought there was going to be more of a story arc.
Like, more like a musical.
More like a musical, because they've got songs, and I was like kind of thinking, what are these songs about? Like, what's going to happen? Who are the main characters?
It's just like an upmarket.
trapeze.
It's like an upmarket Billy Smart's Big Top Circus, isn't it? But you had a good time, right?
I really, really recommend it. It was brilliant. But yes, I was...
What happened?
Stop teasing me.
A spectacle, but no narrative.
But that's exactly what I should have said, a spectacle. Less of a narrative.
Yes.
Talk about
Thank you, Emma.
spectacles. What about this last night, James? Front page of the Express, every newspaper. Tory rebels caved in over Rwanda and it all went through.
Yeah, so Rishi wins the day as rebellion melts away, is how the Express puts it. Slightly optimistic in that if Rishi Sunak... It was highly unlikely Rishi Sunak would lose it like 9 months out from an election. It would have been the first time a sitting Prime Minister had lost a bill on the third reading since 1977. It would have been a disaster, frankly. But I'm not sure it's this great win for him. It's his kind of... he's putting everything on the line to get the Rwanda flights going before the next election. He's staking everything on this. But, I mean, running the election on immigration, I think is going to benefit the Reform Party more necessarily than it's going to benefit Rishi Sunak.
It's basically not a disaster for the Prime Minister. I mean, it can't be sold that much more positively, can it?
It's not the disaster that it could have been. I think it's pretty disastrous in that he's exposed his party as completely divided, completely riven apart, you know, as we knew. But these Tory rebels, they do not deserve the name of rebel, I'm afraid. They didn't deserve it back in December when they marched up to the top of the hill and then failed to rebel. And they didn't rebel.
Well, you know what? Whether people hate Suella Braverman. Nicola finds it abhorrent, which that's fine, I understand that, and Jenrick. But I'll tell you what, if Jenrick or Braverman were my MP, I would be saying this morning, at least they had the damn courage of their convictions to see through. The rest of them been pontificating for days, and then it just, you know... Lee Anderson, what was that about?
What was that about? So he resigns as deputy chairman.
He went into the lobby, did you hear this?
Then
went into the no lobby, got laughed at, so went and abstained.
I know, and abstention is almost more despicable.
Theresa May.
At least one would respect people if they have the courage of their convictions.
Completely
I think
agree.
this was an absolute joke. The public are not fools. As you say, at least if they had voted against, one would respect them. I mean, even though the Rwanda plan is a total farce, millions of pounds have been wasted. 240 million, I think.
It's all right, because they said they'd give us the money back, Rwanda, yesterday.
Yeah. Well, they're getting...
I don't even understand if you find one jet that will take these would-be...
So it will
migrants.
cost...
If you find a jet and one person goes, Quentin Letts was saying yesterday, this is a powerful message. I'm like, is it? This, to me, Rwanda is the best deterrent. Not the worst deterrent, because if I was an immigrant trying to come to England, I'd go, look at them, they're so screwed up, I'm going to go anyway, throw my papers away and I'm done.
I mean, there is an element of, you can sort of feel sorry for Rishi Sunak in that he was supposed to be sceptical of this plan in the first place and he inherited it from Boris Johnson.
No, come on, James, I've just had the argument with Peter Cardwell. He did not inherit it. I'm sorry, I think this shows his incompetence. I'd love to know what you think about this. He did a deal with Suella Braverman to get the damn job and it's bitten him on the backside.
He should have thrown it out, but he should have thrown it out, but instead he's banked all his
and
political
having not done
capital.
that, they've all got to pretend that they think this is the perfect answer, which we clearly know it isn't. We've got lots more to come on this specific topic, but let's talk about the royals. Emma, front page of the Mail. Let's pray they're both OK. A really sort of surprising development that yesterday afternoon took, and quite intimate details we're learning about, well, Kate and the King.
Yeah, it was. And it was a bit of a bombshell, wasn't it, for both of them to announce this sort of within 90 minutes of each other. I think the way they've done it is appropriate. It's a little bit more modern. We have had a bit more information.
Yeah.
But it's also respectful. I think the King is absolutely brilliant for talking about enlarged prostates, which, well, firstly, we know that men don't go to the doctor. They especially don't go with the waterworks. Enlarged prostate, it is, you know, my father had it for 30 years before he died in his 90s. So I know lots about prostate. It affects many, many men. They are ashamed of it. It can affect their life, you know, sleep, social life, everything, just from needing to pee all the time and not being able to empty their bladder properly. It can also develop into cancer, so it really does need to be checked. But good on the King for, I think probably he judged, rather than the endless speculation, is it cancer, is it this? He thought, I'll just say.
How old are you, Joe?
41.
I think it's a really impressive thing. I think in the old days, we'd have heard about it after it happened. I think it will send a very powerful message. Yeah. You found something out online, because, of course, the first thing I said this morning when I read this story is, I couldn't bear that invasive treatment. Although I've had cancer, so I have treatment all the time. I have scans, but the medicine's changed, isn't it?
We're going to speak to a surgeon a little bit later on who knows far more about this than I do, but there's a sort of preemptive blood test you could do to see if you're at risk. A PSA, exactly. And so I think
the message out,
lots of people still believe that kind of, I just don't want to go through that process, so why would I put myself through it? But, the more conversations we have about this, everyone's going to say, surely the...
And
would you go and have a test?
Yeah, and I think it's important to have this conversation because men are known for not going to the doctor with these kind of problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
With embarrassment. And my uncle's been treated for prostate cancer this last 12 months. He's doing very well. I lost another uncle from prostate cancer before. So, I mean, it is... this brings the issue to the kind of public eye, and the fact they've gone public with it will actually probably save lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And often it's not cancer, it's just an enlarged prostate. Yeah. Often, I mean, prostate cancer is one of the slowest growing, so you can live with it very happily for 20, 30 years. Treatments have got so much better.
I think that's a really important point. I have a friend whose partner went through this and was terrified that he'd be incontinent, was terrified that he'd be embarrassed, and in fact got it sorted and it changed his life. So I think the key... Listen, fair play to him for announcing it, because it wouldn't have happened before, would it?
Absolutely.
Definitely. Let's move on. This is heartbreaking. We're going to speak to the reporter, actually, who broke this story in The Sun a little bit later on the programme. But, James, front page of The Sun, their exclusive. Heartbroken mum's anger at tragedy. Bronson was too tiny to save himself. There are many awful, outstanding questions about what happened to this little boy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a horrible and tragic story of this young boy was staying with his father. His father had a suspected heart attack, but his father has passed away while he's been staying with him. But this isn't discovered for something like 9 or 10 days, by which point the boy is then discovered he's died of dehydration and starvation. It's hard to know kind of what to say about this, other than just, I mean, the eyes have turned to kind of social services in terms of what they were doing. And people have also asked the question, why wasn't the mother in contact with the child? It went 10 days with no contact, and then suddenly this boy was discovered dead. So, I mean, there are questions to be asked, but at the moment it just seems this very, very tragic case.
Rachel Dale, who was part of this story, is going to be on the show later. I don't mean this disrespectfully to you or James. We were talking as the parents of a 3 and 4. I really...
No, and Jeremy, I live alone with a 3-year-old, and it literally frightens me, this kind of story, because I go through it. What would my 3-year-old do on his own if mummy... anyone can trip and fall and... And
it's very easy now.
It's very...
And I want to make this point, because everybody, and I made it yesterday, will say social services have failed. I want to get into a debate about social care budgets. I want to say one thing I said yesterday. That's a very easy target. There might be failings. There will be an inquiry. We never, ever talk about some of the amazing work social services do. Let's be careful. The police have reported themselves to the watchdog. The mother and so I just think we have to report.
Of course.
The reason I get wound up is we live now in a society where we care about pronouns and we care about things that, to me, are not as relevant as a 2-year-old starving to death in 2024 in the United Kingdom is a disgrace.
It's an absolute disgrace. There were repeated visits. I know we don't want to speculate, but there were repeated visits with no answer. I think going back 2 days later and then going back 2 days later is just not good enough when there is a very young child involved. But we don't know, so... We'll follow that and more of that on the show later. Em, back to you, Mail, page 28. Rip-off ticket machines. Yeah, these astounding price differences that people are talking about between basically buying your ticket when you rock up at the station and going online and buying advance tickets.
I've started buying my train tickets online. I've got an app now.
Excellent.
Well, I mean,
you might be saving yourself a lot of money.
Welcome
to the 21st century.
I'd never ever thought that I'd be able to buy a train line.
I cannot believe you were still buying them at a ticket machine. These ticket machines are dreadful. Basically, they did lots of tests. You go from Cheshire to London. You will pay, if you just turn up at the station, you will pay 154% more, because often they're not smart machines. They can't do the split ticketing. They can't give you an advance fare out.
Don't do the split ticketing. I did that. Do you know what split ticketing means?
But often you're coming back off-peak.
Halfway through my journey, and some man made me move to another carriage.
Oh, but then your fare may have been much less.
I'm not bothered. Jeremy, I'm not moving in the middle, trying to sleep.
That's because you are going first class, probably.
Anyway,
That's how you make the move. These are regular people. These are regular people. They're not getting the deals online that you can get. Yeah. They're not
These
getting
machines they're not very user friendly. And if you buy it on the app, or you've had a problem where, you know, I've been in the train station, my phone's run out of battery.
We're doing this. It's all like
and then you've got to buy the tickets. And you think, how do I find that price? And often they are there, but it's really complicated to work out which set of buttons you've got to press off peak. What rail card?
And often during peak periods.
Your e-tickets Thursday.
Well, do you want to know where Jeremy's going?
Yes, of course we do.
But often during peak periods, you cannot access an off-peak ticket, even if you're coming back in off-peak. Often they are not
the tickets?
smart
the machines.
machines.
That's the rail companies.
Yeah, of course.
Wow, that's terrible. Shay, Telegraph, front page, Rachel Reeves. It's extraordinary. She's in Davos, trying, quite rightly, to talk to the world leaders and economists.
You say quite rightly, but it's quite unusual for us to have the Labour Party courting an audience at Davos.
Well, not only is that outrageous,
Starmer always goes to Davos.
But she is considering, has let it slip, and I think this is seismic, that they might consider tax cuts for the highest earners. The Labour Party synonymous with wanting to screw anybody that's been a high earner over the years. This is seismic.
I mean, I don't think it's that surprising because it's based on... So over the last 6 years, tax thresholds have been frozen. So there's been this thing called fiscal drag where 7 million people are paying more tax.
Yep.
They're not... It's because earnings have gone up with inflation, so you're being pulled into higher tax bands. So you've got people who don't, earn astronomical amounts now paying the highest rate of tax. I think this is reasonable that, I think people are saying across the political spectrum that there's this stealth tax with people being dragged into higher bands. And especially when so much of the wealth that's been generated in recent years has been through the inflation of property prices going up, yet earnings haven't gone up since 2007. So I think it's perfectly fair to look at tax and say, should the tax bands reflect what's been happening with earnings?
Do you know, Emma, Peter put it earlier to us, our political commentator, this is Labour having their sort of tanks on the lawn of the Tory voters.
Of course it is. And I don't think, there's not that much difference between the two parties anymore. Many people feel that. Secondly, I don't think it's surprising at all. This is them trying to, it's a difficult balancing act. They're trying to appeal to everybody.
They're casting the net very wide.
Yes, they are.
They're almost saying anyone
Yes, they are.
could
And it's an election year.
When I say seismic is... I would never have assumed that could happen. That, in my mind, is how perilous the Tories' position is that we're listening to a would-be Labour Chancellor saying, I'm going to potentially carry out tax cuts for the super rich. Whatever, I'm not doubting you, but can you imagine Corbyn? I mean, it's such a shame.
That's why Corbyn lost. That's one of the reasons Corbyn lost very badly.
But you all backed him. They backed him.
The Tories are retreating to their safe space now, talking about immigration, whereas Labour's talking to middle earners and saying, look, we're going to cut your taxes. It's very smart.
Exactly. They're talking to middle earners.
Somebody said to me the other day that they would never in their lives have contemplated voting for the Labour Party. They were brought up to be a Tory. But this person said to me, when I look at the television nowadays or I read the newspaper, I'm starting to think, actually, would it mess my life up? Could it be any worse than Mr Barker? And I think that is the Tories' problem, that middle strand, if you like, is actually looking at Labour and going, maybe we should give you a go.
Huge amount of disaffected Tory voters who simply cannot vote for the Tories are now considering Labour. They're also considering reform in some cases.
We've only got 30 seconds, but we've got to do this story. Go on, it's all yours.
Well, Thunder Thighs,
I don't know why I said that.
Front page of the Star, exactly. Who are you speaking for, Jeremy? Thunder Thighs to save lives. Big quads make you cleverer and fitter.
It's a bit weird, this story. Apparently, having bigger thighs can make you cleverer by boosting your blood flow. It can boost the nerve signals that produce brain cells. So basically, having big, chunky, fat thighs. But it's unclear to me whether this is as in an Olympic person with fat thighs like Chris Hoy, who's got huge thunder thighs because he's a blooming cyclist. He's an Olympic cyclist and they're solid muscle. Or, they're very weird. Cyclists are sort of very skinny and then these huge thighs from cycling.
They're ridiculous human beings.
Or do they mean just your regular size 18 UK woman?
I don't know.
Yeah, so is it like do your squats in the gym and then you're going to be healthier? Or just
being...
obese. It's different things.
Is it fitness or lymphedema? There's a difference, isn't there? Thank you very much indeed. 6:45.
Don't call us scientists.
That's right. James Omer back in just after in a bit.